The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Going to wear this on the day that the Cavs play, since everyone had a problem with that. From now on, I'm just going to wear it after days they win.
I like
so there
that.
you go. There you go.
I like this decision. This is sort of a protest.
No, this is a good choice. This is a good choice.
It is? Okay. We'll see. We'll see how it pays off for him. I mean, it certainly can't go any worse because the Cavs, every time they win, you're going to wear it. So it's like it's a win-win.
I just, every time I wear it, they lose. I'm like, yeah, they haven't. I mean, 0-1. I mean, who would have thought that, But I had a Browns. See, you guys have messed with me, though. I had a Browns hoodie on today. Going to the game tonight. It's gonna be hot as hell. It's gonna be very warm. A lot too much. So I'm worried about all the sun that's gonna be just beating down on the stadium later on tonight. That's what I'm worried about. But I was like, I'm gonna change the hoodie. I don't want to jinx the Browns' chances of winning only their third game of the season as we head into December here. So,
Wouldn't jinxing the Browns at this point be them winning the game because you'd want to lose for a better draft pick?
I'm not sure. It's tough to be that bad of an organization and try to figure out what you want.
I guess that's true.
Nope, not gonna work. Nice try, almost. I almost took a shot. I'm like, no.
I love remote days.
How far of a drive is it from Dayton to Cleveland?
About a little over three hours.
There you go.
So, but no, I saw a mock draft today, and I can't believe. I mean, this is total Browns-Bengals stuff right now. It should not be, but mock drafts. Travis Hunter to Cleveland. That's one of the write-ups I saw today. Having Cleveland, of course, look at a veteran quarterback. Whether possibly Jameis Winston. They feel like there's enough talent on this roster. If they fill a few holes, they can get back to being a competitive football team, whatever that means in Cleveland. So, Travis Hunter in Cleveland. If winning loses them, Travis Hunter. Yeah, I would have a problem with that. But I would not mind beating the Steelers tonight. I can't. I would like to see them beat Pittsburgh tonight.
What's the spread? I haven't even looked at this. I haven't even looked to bet this game yet.
Pittsburgh 3.5. Pittsburgh
3.5 on the road. All right.
Over under 36.
Yikes. I think that's fair.
Did you see that Mike Tomlin is 0-7 all time on Thursday Night Football?
Wow. No, I didn't see that.
On the road. I'm sorry. On the road. He's 0-7 on Thursday Night Football on the road. This is the most baseball stat ever. So it's pointless. It means nothing about tonight.
To take the Browns. Outright.
Is it a system? It is a system.
Ooh.
It is a system. The Cleveland Browns are going to win tonight, Kenner. They are going to win tonight.
They have never won a game that I've been in attendance for. I do bring a lot of bad luck. I've never witnessed. I don't know if people keep track of their team's records when they attend games. But, Ohio State always wins when I go, but that's usually because I'm poor and I can only afford to go watch them play Akron or something.
Well, the thing with your teams is the Browns always losing when you're in attendance and Ohio State always winning when you're in attendance. I'm not sure how much you have to do with that. One of those teams just loses a lot of games, and one of them just wins a lot of games.
Yeah, and I imagine you're not going to the end of season Ohio State games. I imagine you're going to the beginning when they play nobody. So, listen, Kinder, I'm so sorry about that. I'm sorry to hear that. The best part about the MLB Ballpark app.
Oh, it's the best.
So every time you buy a ticket through there, and that's how you buy tickets in Major League Baseball now, it records your record. It records your personal record at games. So if you have a winning record or a losing record.
And it splits it up by team and everything. And I'm 1-0 at Ohio State games in the Ballpark app.
Really?
Since that game was played at Wrigley, you had to buy the tickets in the Ballpark app.
Love that.
So it lists college football on those records.
Oh, yeah. I meant to ask you it's Thursday already, but how was Wrigley? I forgot you
went. Really
I saw all the stuff on Snap. How cool was that?
Yeah, it was unbelievably cool. I was shocked. The experience was really cool. I knew it probably wasn't going to be the best way to watch a football game, but I was shocked with how well it was set up. And we were in the bleachers, so about as far from the field as you could get geographically, and we still saw the vast majority of the field very, very well. So they did a really good job with it. No one got hurt running into the wall, so that was a massive positive. Northwestern's a little bit dirty, but it seems Jeremiah Smith's okay. So we move on, and Ohio State escaped with a win. So that was fun. It was a really, really good time.
What, you mean the turning of the ankle? That's
Yeah,
dirty?
I mean
That's
that was preposterous.
just frowned upon slightly. But yeah, Ohio State at Wrigley probably will never happen again. But I thought that was unique. I forgot that you went, but that's pretty cool. No, so I get season tickets for the Reds, but I do that because I write it off at the end of the year, but I do it so I can give it out to listeners and stuff throughout the season. So I give out tickets throughout. So I can't track what my record is because all the times that it tracks that I go, I'm technically giving the tickets out. So I don't know. But the Reds don't win a lot of games either. So
they don't. You're a very kind you're a very kind person, Kenner, a kind soul. That's what I got from there. Are you concerned with the snow today on your drive down to Cleveland?
No, not too much.
Cleveland?
I'm not driving.
I always say you're driving down. When I'm going, even when I go to if I went to New York, I'm going down to New York.
No,
Thank you.
Just don't care about the geography at all.
No,
I respect that.
Not even a little bit.
I respect that as long as you're consistent.
I'm driving down to Michigan Town. That's where I'm going. So that's
I'm Team Elliott on that. I'm Team Elliott on that. I do the same
That's
thing.
fair.
I could be in Mexico and I say, hey, what are you guys doing this weekend? I might go down to Canada if you guys want to, tag along.
Fair enough.
Maps be damned. I don't even care. But there you go. But no, this is Off the Bench, a very long open without anyone being introduced. But Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister in the producer chair. Casey, how we doing? You live? What are you doing? Are you working on something over there?
Yeah, I'm just prepping for this show and the other shows, and we're hard at work over here. Just being a producer.
That's right. Best in the biz.
Well, thank you, Jacob.
Of course.
Yeah, he does what you do, just not as good, right? What did he insult you with a little bit ago before the show started, Jake?
No.
We got to bring that to the air.
That's not what I said. I just said that
I know.
He should invite a guest
that's
been a friend of the program, and his name is Vach.
I think
you'd have a great time with that because he cursed
Evan McPherson.
Vach did?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
He said that he was the only reason why we made it to the Super Bowl. The only reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't get on that.
It sounds like him and Trace would get along.
It does. It
sounds more like Trace's take as well with that. But nonetheless, today's show, we'll get into a little keep, cut, or trade action. I'll throw out various players on the current Cincinnati Bengals roster, of course, because everyone has buried the Bengals. They have no chance of making the playoffs. Mathematically, still very much in the hunt. They're still very good offense. I almost said team, but very good offense. That could make things interesting. But we'll throw out various players on this Bengals roster, and the guys will tell you whether the Bengals should keep them, cut them, or trade them. We'll get to that in a moment. Plus, current under-the-radar players on this Bengals roster right now, which players that we don't talk a lot about right now because they're just not getting their opportunity to shine that could play a big role on this team moving forward. We'll get to that shortly as well. Cincinnati Reds action, a couple more likely scenarios. What's more likely, Allie De La Cruz to win an MVP next season, or, of course, Hunter Green winning a Cy Young? We'll talk about the Cy Young coming up here in just a moment. Another more likely scenario that we'll throw out, Terry Francona to lead the Reds to at least one World Series, or Terry Francona to never reach the playoffs at all with the Cincinnati Reds. Which scenario is more likely? We'll get to those coming up around the corner. A little negative, I know. Little negative, I get that. College football upset. Oh, what's that?
I was just going to say, if I say that they're never going to make the playoffs with Terry Francona, somebody else can have the franchise.
What is there to work for?
Somebody else can have it. Somebody just move the franchise to a different city and let them have a crack at it.
Well, I've said that before. Terry Francona scares the hell out of me. He scares the hell out of me as the manager of the Reds because if it doesn't work with him,
Jacksonville.
What the hell's going to happen?
You have the most talented player you're ever going to have in this organization, and the best manager you're ever going to have in this organization, at least on paper. And if it doesn't work, then woof.
It's pretty deflating.
Maybe he can convince Juan Soto to come.
That's right.
Telling me there's
anywhere
a chance.
but LA.
And it's wild that they're talking to him too. It's wild. If they land him, I didn't get really pissed about Shohei. It didn't really surprise me, but this one would be the straw that breaks the camel's back if they end up getting him, because at that point, baseball, you can't sit here and act like there's no longer a problem. You can no longer sit here and act like it's no longer a problem. The two biggest free agents back-to-back years go to a roster that is already the most loaded roster in baseball. If anyone thought that the Yankees were the problem for all these decades, they're no longer even close to being the problem. The Dodgers are the biggest problem in baseball at that point. Kudos to them for having the money and the resources to do it, but that will kill baseball if that happens.
That's why Elliot and I are semi-rooting for it to happen. I mean, it would be terrible, and and I would be upset as a fan, but I think Juan Soto signing a $650 million deal with the Dodgers is one of the only things that can actually spark some change in baseball, because like you just said there, the major free agents back-to-back off seasons going to the Dodgers for decade-long deals, spending over, probably $2 billion when we get out of this free agency cycle in the last 2 years if they are to get Juan Soto. That would raise questions for the people that don't even want to ask them. So, and everyone like us in the small markets would get much, much louder. So I think that would actually spark some change, which would be very nice. But at what cost, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, you would wonder if Manfred would step in on something like that. I don't know if he would, but you've seen it in the NBA where I think it was a trade that was vetoed, right?
Chris Paul to the Lakers.
It was the Chris Paul to the Lakers was vetoed. I would think that this would be. I don't know if it would be blocked. It would.
It's a lot more difficult to block free agents.
Free agents, yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. It would kill the sport for sure, and I think the only way to enact change in terms of like the financial stuff is to have something like this happen where every other franchise that, the Reds, the Rays, every small market franchise is just sitting back looking like, what are we supposed to do? There's literally not one thing we can do. We just have to, I guess, just try to overcome it.
I do like that we talk about the Juan Soto thing, Reds fans especially, and really all small market fans alike. It's like, all right, he can't sign with the Dodgers, so we all still have a chance. Well, it's the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, I guess, who were second for Ohtani too. Like, they're not a small market team. None of these guys have a chance. There's 4 teams that have a chance to sign these guys. We just like the illusion of having a chance, so don't put them all on the same team.
Yep.
Yeah, spread out the wealth amongst 4 teams so that everyone else can scraps. Nonetheless. But Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. Quick open to the show, but we'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, we'll throw it to our guy, Elliot. Elliot will give us the headlines and score updates from around the world of sports. So I didn't mean to hog your segment, but I would hate to take that away from you. So let's give him his segment. Let's give him his time to shine. Everybody, Elliot Rearing, when we come back, Elliot's headlines right here on Off the Bench. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton and Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, of course. We touched on a lot to open up the show, kind of, sort of. Browns at Steelers, or I should say Steelers at Browns tonight, Thursday night football, week 12 of the NFL season kicking off. The Cincinnati Bengals have a bye week, but we still have some Bengals topics for you coming up here around the corner. We'll talk a little Cincinnati Reds, as we mentioned a little bit ago, a couple more likely scenarios that we'll dive into as well. Plus college football, upset alert. What upset alert? What matchups are you waving the upset alert flag on as we head into the weekend slate of games? Can't believe it. The second to last week of the regular season. That's pretty
crazy.
Wild. How quickly. Yeah, that season just flying by.
Unbelievable.
Nonetheless. But we'll get to all of that coming up. But first, let's send it over to Elliot for Elliot's headlines.
Elliot loves 3 things: Joey Votto, David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
That's right. I do. I truly do love those all 3 of those things. College basketball, Xavier. They took out the trash last night. Siena lost 80-55 to the Musketeers. Ryan Conwell led Muskie scorers, 16 points, 6 for 9 shooting. Fremantle added 10 points with 9 rebounds and 3 assists. Sean Miller was visibly upset after the game, visibly and vocally upset after the game, saying that there was a little bit of stat padding going on with the Xavier Musketeers. Listen, I respect the hell out of that. He came out and said basically, if you're not going to try to play defense in a game like this, you're just going to try to score and shoot and worry about your stats, then you're not going to play. You're not going to get in the game. I thought that was a pretty cool quote by Sean Miller. So good for the Musketeers, 80-55. They do not cover the spread, I believe. Wow. Important to some.
Real quick, how about the Miller brothers, though? How about Archie and Sean Miller? I mean, those two were about to, take on the college basketball world. Those two were about to dominate the college basketball landscape, of course, and can't deny what Sean did at Arizona. Of course, he was kind of following today's rules. He was a little ahead of his time, if you will. But obviously, hasn't been able to get Xavier back to where they were even when he was here the first time. Hasn't been able to get them back there since, for quite some time now. I mean, we've seen Sean Miller kind of not be able to get back to the promised land, as well as Archie Miller, who did great things at Dayton. Obviously, multiple years taking them to the NCAA tournament, an Elite Eight run. And since then, Archie's been fired by Indiana. He's not doing great so far at Rhode Island, a couple years into that as well. But Sean and Archie, the two brothers that were about to take over the college basketball world, and all of a sudden that Hurley guy just came speeding right past him, and he's dominating the college basketball landscape for the time being. So, yeah, it's wild to see how much the Miller brothers have taken a step back, considering the trajectory that they once had.
He did make a Sweet 16. He did make a Sweet 16, to be fair to Sean Miller. So I also think their program is more relevant now, obviously, than it was with their boy Steele. So how's Steele doing at Miami? Has he won a game yet there? Not sure.
Not great.
I don't know. I think Sean Miller's a pretty damn good basketball coach. Moving on here, we have third-ranked Gonzaga. They won 84-41 over Long Beach State. Who cares? Eighth-ranked Alabama. They dropped 100 points in their their win over 25th ranked Illinois. Mark Sears scoreless.
Goose egg.
0 for 5 in a game where they scored 100 points.
Mark Sears, after the game, posted a picture on his Instagram story at about 3 o'clock in the morning. He was in the gym getting some shots up. He shot about 800 shots, shot over 80% on the machine. So I'm more than willing to say Mark Sears is going to be okay. Preseason SEC Player of the Year. Alabama getting back on track after the loss at Purdue. The freshman LeBaron Philon from Mobile, Alabama, a guy that Alabama fans have been excited about for years now. Thought we were going to be able to build around him for a while, but the way this season's going, just 5 games in, certainly looks like a one and done. Last night he had 16, 9, and 7, a near triple-double for the freshman, with Sears having an off night. Just impressive play, really top down from Alabama, excluding their superstar player. And to score 100 points against a ranked team with 0 from the SEC Player of the Year, that's shocking. I'd be scared about Alabama.
That's wild. NBA news. The Cavaliers destroyed the Pelicans 128-100. Ty Jerome put up a career-high 29 points in the win. The Bucks beat the Bulls 122-106. Grizzlies take care of the 76ers 117-111. They are dead last in the NBA with 2 wins. Paul George has now been injured. He exits the game after hyperextending his knee yet again. So it is a absolute clown show in Philadelphia this year. It's gonna be honestly, it might be the breaking point for whatever the hell is going on there.
The Grizzlies were without all of their players as well. No John Morant, no Steven Adams, and they still lost to a healthy Sixers team, at least going into the game. It's terrible in Philadelphia right now.
Brutal. I think the Pistons have 6 more wins. Brutal. Pacers, they fall to the Rockets 130-113, and the Warriors, they blow the doors off the Hawks 120-97. NHL news, the Maple Leafs shut out the Golden Knights 3-0. Fraser Minton scored his first career goal. The Hurricanes moved to 14-4. They take down the Flyers last night. MLB news, Chris Sale and Tarek Skubal are your Cy Young Award winners. Of note, Hunter Green finished 8th, earning him an extra $1 million in incentives. So if you took a look at Hunter Green's contract, the reason you got him so low is because of all the incentives that were tucked away into that contract, which is how contracts should be made.
Right.
You should have a decent base salary, and then if your player is really, really good, like Hunter Green is, guess what? You make a lot of money. And if he made $1 million just from coming in 8th, I don't know what the number was if he would have won it, but I'm sure it would have been a decent amount. So hopefully Hunter Green gets all the incentives in the world, and that contract's worth a hell of a lot more than it looks like on paper.
See, I'm pissed. You either win the Cy Young, you either win it or you don't, and stop taking the organization's money that they could be using to go get other players. Hunter Green's selfish, man. Like, that's all. This is how bad and tortured we are as Reds fans. When I saw that they had to give him $1 million, the first thought that came to my mind is, do they have it? And the second thing that came to my mind is, well, that's just another excuse. They lose the money on the TV deal, and Hunter Green's success just taking all their money and incentives. Now they have nothing left to go pay players. Of course, the bluff that was called by Martinez. I mean, the Reds are in a tough spot before we even get to the big-time free agency window. So we'll see. But, no, I think that was cool. 8th, I mean, is that low? Are you surprised he was that far down on the
He only got 2 votes.
It seems low to me, but he did miss a decent chunk of change at the end of the season.
That's
there.
Fair.
So I thought that was really low. And I also had a little bit of a you're making a bit there about the Reds' finances.
It was a joke. It was.
I know you were. I know it was.
Not a funny one, but
I was kind of wondering though after I saw that one incentive if maybe that injury wasn't really an injury at all. Maybe it was
pushing him out of the top 5.
Maybe the Reds are like, yeah, you're doing too good this year. Maybe you should go down to 8th, so we only have to pay you $1 million.
I mean, I'm sure if you got $1 million for 8th, I'm sure it's top 10, top 5 win
Yeah.
is the thresholds for the bonuses.
Probably.
So missing those games probably did save him a couple million.
Yeah, so good for the Reds, I guess. Moving on, we have I think only a couple other things here. Aaron Rodgers in the NFL was considered to be benched after the loss to the Broncos earlier this season by the Jets owner, Woody Johnson. I don't know if this was leaked on purpose. I don't know the point of it, but it is interesting to see what's going on in New York this year, and it has just been a disaster, an absolute train wreck. So Aaron Rodgers has said he wants to come back next year. I think if he does, I think he's just setting that franchise back an extra couple years. It's just retire, buddy.
Aaron Rodgers, it was leaked right after the benching news that Woody Johnson, if it's up to him, does not plan on bringing Rodgers back next year. No
Really?
guaranteed money on next year's contract. The plan, at least as of now, for Woody Johnson and the Jets front office is to cut Aaron Rodgers, and if he wants to play next year, he'll be doing it elsewhere. So
Really?
An interesting situation to keep an eye on in New York, but with the coach and GM out of there, I assume whoever you hire wants to bring in their own guy. And with how bad they've been this year, they're probably going to pick high enough to have their choice of a quarterback. I'd expect the Jets to draft a quarterback and Rodgers be playing elsewhere. I'd circle Tennessee and the other team in New York.
The other team in New York, speaking of them, the other NFL news I have, Drew Lock looked visibly frustrated as he was told that he was the second-string quarterback to who's the Italian guy? What's his
Tommy
name?
DeVito.
Tommy DeVito. It's pizza time.
Hey, Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, the Giants situation's bad because that's openly. They're openly tanking. That's one thing in the NFL where I think you can't really fix it. Is there a fine for tanking?
Yeah, it's what happened with the Dolphins when Brian Flores
That's
said
right,
the coach
that's
told
right.
him to lose games. They were fined, I believe, a first-round pick.
But they're openly not trying to win games, the New York Giants, which is the right move. Don't get me wrong, it is the right move. But it's probably frustrating for everybody in the locker room to have your franchise go with, a quarterback that has no business playing in this league. Respectfully.
If you're going to bench Daniel Jones, I completely understand it and support it because of the $25 million injury guarantee. I don't understand not starting Drew Lock. He's clearly the better quarterback than Tommy DeVito. I don't think anyone has a question about that. We saw him come in Seattle last year and win a primetime game. Tommy DeVito gave him a good spark last year. I get that, but we saw how bad it got at the end there. I don't think Tommy DeVito is going to win him any games, but I don't think they're trying to win games. So I understand that Drew Lock's upset with it, and he probably should be, but you know who's not upset with it?
Who?
Daniel Jones. The clips of him at practice yesterday were dancing around the sideline. He was doing 360s on the practice squad field.
Why wouldn't
They
you?
snapped him the ball one time, and he was doing the disco. He was doing the finger. I think he's the happiest man in the world, and what would make you happier than getting paid $40 million to not do your job?
Listen.
It's the dream.
It's a phenomenal gig. You don't even have to show up.
He's the fourth-string quarterback. They signed Tim Boyle off the Dolphins practice squad. He's not going to dress for games.
Oh, no, man. Good for Danny Jones, man. Take your money. I wouldn't even play anymore. Just take your money, go live in Hawaii, and live in peace for the rest of your life.
I think if he is able to skate out the rest of this year without getting in a single game, which I assume he will be, I think he'll get about a decade-long career as a backup. He just looks like a backup.
No doubt about it. I think he could. But those are your headlines in sports.
So I'm a fan of a team that many people deem to be the worst organization in sports in the Cleveland Browns. But, when we look at the New York Jets, is it safe to say that, who is, in all seriousness, and if it's Cleveland to you guys, that's fine. But who is the worst organization in the National Football League? To me, I know Cleveland has done their part to win that award, no doubt about it. But at the same time, their job is significantly tougher trying to get free agents to go play in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
When you're an organization like the Jets, like free agents, we talk about New York being a city that free agents would love to flock to. And if you just, it's amazing how many teams in New York across sports in general do struggle from time to time. It's pretty wild. That never seems to be the number one aspect that makes them great. The Jets have dropped the bag so many times, and they're a bad ownership. They're a bad organization, and I think it has to do because they have one of the worst ownership groups in there. They have been getting ripped all week.
Yeah.
But what a total disaster. I mean, I give them credit for getting Aaron Rodgers. They've drafted well, but the guy that drafted well for him, they just fired 2 days ago. I don't know, man. I look at the Jets, total absolute dysfunction. I know the Browns have done their part to win that award, but man, oh man, I think the Jets are the worst organization in the National Football League at this point.
Jets, Browns, Jaguars, Panthers, in my opinion, is the lowest tier of franchises. I think they're all pretty close.
Lions. I mean,
but they're not anymore. They're out of it now. They would put the Bengals down there pre-Burrow.
They're out of it now. But I mean, the past 2 years. But it's
right.
Like,
but the thing with the rest of those teams, and the reason I would still lean Cleveland. The Jets have those 2 Mark Sanchez years in my lifetime when they went to the AFC Championship. The Panthers have the 1 Cam Newton year where they went 15-1 and went to the Super Bowl. Even the Jaguars have the Blake Bortles year where they went to the AFC Championship.
Yep.
The Browns don't have even 1 year I can point to where they made a run. I guess the playoff win with Baker would be the best example. I would say it's the Browns and the Jaguars at the bottom, and the Jets are almost a decade away from those 2 AFC championships. So I got to get those out of my brain at some point. But just the fact that I watched them play back-to-back years, and it probably doesn't hurt that they beat the Bengals on the way there, but back-to-back years in the AFC championship, that still sticks out in my mind for the Jets. So that's why I give them a little bit of a nudge over the rest of the teams in that area. But certainly since then, they're right down there and probably the worst.
Do you know how many wins the Lions have in the postseason? Total wins?
That can't be many.
It's 3.
Last year.
They have 3 playoff wins all time. The Texans have 5. The Browns have 5. Yep, all time.
The Lions have 3 all time.
That's what it said. That's what I'm seeing.
Wow.
No, I believe you. I mean, yeah, you have to win. You have to get there first, and they don't get there often. But they're a completely different animal right now. I mean, they're still a lion, same animal, but as an organization,
Yeah.
There you go.
That was
all right.
That was good.
Can you be the same animal but the different beast?
Yeah, there you go. Whatever.
What does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
Justin Kidder, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll step away for a few moments. Let's dive into the Cincinnati Reds. We'll throw out a couple, more likely scenarios. We touched on it a little bit ago, but what's more likely, Allie De La Cruz to win an MVP or Hunter Green to win a Cy Young in 2025? Also consider this. What's more likely to happen in Cincinnati with Terry Francona as the manager? Terry Francona leading the Reds to at least 1 World Series during his time as manager? Is that more likely, or is it more likely that this team never reaches the playoffs with Terry Francona as the manager? We'll get to all of that when we come back. This is Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. All right, and we are back off the bench. ESPN 1410 Wing AM at Dayton, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We appreciate everyone hanging out with us here today on a snowy, wintry Thursday. It took a while, but it finally feels like winter outside.
Yeah.
So, there you go. All right, couple, what's that?
I was gonna say I was looking at this. I didn't put this in headlines because it's not a sports thing at all. I was looking at the open frishes that are still here in the area. Hamilton has one of the very few ones that's still open.
Wow.
How about that? Just wanted to make that very clear. Here in Hamilton, the Frishes is still going strong. I think there's like 10 franchises. I saw that on Twitter. So I thought I'd share.
Save the big boy.
That's right. It is funny to see them all. They're all locked in a little jail cell. Do you see that? They're all locked. All the
big boys?
All the big boys are locked in like one little compound.
How much do you think a big boy costs if they're closing them down? Because I want one bad.
I mean, it can't be more than $500.
What if we just zoom out Casey's camera and every time he cuts over there, the big boy's standing in that open seat next to him, and it's a 2-man desk still?
I think that's
great. The greatest idea maybe of all time.
I think that's great.
I'm going to get a second big boy for the backdrop of Chatterbox Bengals.
That's how we do it.
Put a jersey on him.
That's how we do it.
I'm going to find a way to get a big boy.
No, they're closing. I mean, I've read they're closing pretty much as many of them down that are out there, but again, maybe a new investment group's coming in to buy them from what I read, but you know what? Who knows? A whole segment on Big Boy. How about that? Look at that.
Yeah, I thought I'd mention it.
Are you a McRib guy? I see the McRib's coming back if we're going to continue.
Oh, am I a McRib guy? From the time the McRib comes out to the time the McRib's taken away, 90% of my bloodstream is McRib sauce.
There you go.
And they're selling it by the gallons now, too?
Oh, I'm going to get a gallon for sure. I love the McRib, man. You're shaking your head. You're not a McRib guy?
I'm not. I've never had the McRib.
You gotta get a
I don't
McRib.
plan on eating the McRib, so no, I'm out.
I'm getting you a McRib.
We'll see.
Are you concerned at all that that Kennedy might get rid of the McRib?
Oh,
That's fair. He was
You
eating
need a burger
McDonald's on the
with
flight the other day, so we should be good.
okay. What did he have?
We should be good.
Salad?
He looked disgusted.
Yeah.
He had
Okay.
a burger in his hands. They had to pay him $1,000 to do it.
By the way, if you zoom in on that picture, we're not talking politics, but there is a picture of Musk and Trump and Kennedy and one of Trump's kids sitting there on the plane, and they all I don't know how much you guys eat, but they all had multiple burgers on their plate. It wasn't just I just get a meal and just have a burger, fries, and a drink. These guys had multiple sandwiches in front of them. They eat a lot. Good for them.
Well, I mean, they're rich, so why not? Why
They're
not? Why
big guys.
not? Why not get an extra one? I mean,
Hey,
you
a
just
little
throw
taste,
it.
yeah.
You can just throw it away. What are they gonna lose $1?
All right, we'll talk Cincinnati Reds here. Speaking of teams with a lot of money, there you go. The Cincinnati Reds would love to have some of that money that's up in that plane with those guys. But Cincinnati Reds, Terry Francona, the manager of the Cincinnati Reds now, we're all super excited about that. But we joked earlier, I was like, man, it kind of scares the hell out of me that Terry Francona is the manager of the Cincinnati Reds because obviously we know what the potential is with having a leader like Terry Francona. We've seen him do it in multiple markets. We've seen him, multiple World Series wins, multiple World Series appearances. He led the Guardians or the Indians back in 2016 to a World Series appearance. We had multiple World Series with the Boston Red Sox, and now he's here in Cincinnati. He's had success pretty much everywhere he's gone. I know that brief stop early in his career didn't have a lot of good players, but he has good players here. But if you can't have success with Terry Francona in Cincinnati, that scares the hell out of me. Because if Terry Francona can't come in with the generational talent, like Jacob said earlier, with a generational talent like Allie De La Cruz, with solid young pitching, a guy in Hunter Green who just finished top 10 in the Cy Young voting, if you can't make the playoffs with Terry Francona as your manager, with just the base of those two players right there and the young talent that's around them, who can get it done? What else can this ownership group do if you can't find a way to succeed with Terry Francona? Terry Francona scares the hell out of me because if they succeed like he has everywhere else, that's great. But the pit in our stomachs, if he doesn't succeed, I don't know how we get past that because, like I said, we will feel so deflated, so defeated because if he can't get it done, who the hell else can do it? I don't know. I'm very interested by this 3-year, at the very least 3-year run. We hope he finishes out the contract. But man, oh man. So the more likely scenario I'm throwing out is what is more likely? At the very least, the Reds getting a World Series appearance like what he has gotten out of his last 2 stops? Or is it more likely that the Reds don't reach the playoffs at all during the Francona run here in Cincinnati? What's more likely?
I think it's far more likely that the Reds don't make the playoffs than make the World Series. I was having a debate with my buddy Zach, and it was like if you had to give percentages out to different milestones for the franchise and franchises in the city. I think if you had to give a percentage of whether or not the Bengals are going to win a Super Bowl in our lifetime, I would say that number is probably like 50%.
Oh.
I think 48%, 40%.
Wow.
I think it's a high number the Bengals win a Super Bowl. I do. The Reds winning a World Series, 1%, 3%. The max I'd go is 3%. Because the way I look at it is this. What are the odds the Bengals make another AFC Championship game? Like 75%?
No.
That's a high. You don't think it's 75% the Bengals?
I don't think it's even
in
close.
our lifetime.
I think the chance the Bengals win a Super Bowl in our lifetime is like 15 to 20%, and I think the chance they make
Oh,
it back to an
I
AFC
think-
championship is like 30 to 35%.
Oh, I thought you were going to be higher.
No, I
Wow.
think it's
thought
much,
you- I
much
thought you would
lower.
be more-
I
Okay.
think it's very, very hard to get to a Super Bowl.
2 playoff wins, like that's just like to get to an AFC Championship game is so vastly easier.
I
than
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with the overall point you're making. I just think the percentages are a little high.
Maybe, and it might be just a little skewed. But I do think if you have a good quarterback, your percentage is vastly higher
No
than
question.
those teams who don't have it. And on top of all of that, I do think the Bengals organization over the past couple years has been significantly better than it has been. Saying that, in baseball, it's just harder. It's harder to win. We led off the show talking about Juan Soto joining Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and the rest of the super team that is the Los Angeles Dodgers. And we're going to sit here and talk about TJ Friedel and Spencer Steer and say we're going to go win a World Series. It's not even in my brain. It's not even a thought in my head. Don't get me wrong. I say this all the time. I'm a bigger Reds fan than I'm a Bengals fan. I'm a massive Reds fan. But if you have to be realistic about it a little bit, the Reds have been one of the worst organizations in sports over the last 15, 20 years. 20 years, they've been bottom, 10 in sports? It's been close. It's close. Maybe not bottom 10, but it's pretty damn close. They don't win games. They don't make the playoffs. They don't win playoff games. So it's hard for me to sit here and say that Terry Francona is going to lead them to a World Series. I think they're going to have success. I think the Reds are going to be successful. But I think success for a team for a franchise, an organization like the Reds, is different than success for an organization like the Dodgers, who can pay for anybody they want, defer the payment to whenever they want, and get a super team. So I'm going to say it's more likely the Reds are going to miss the playoffs for the next 3 years than they are to get to a World Series. Even get to a World Series. Not even win a World Series, get to a World Series.
I think both of these have relatively the same odds of happening, and it's pretty low. I think Terry Francona is going to get this team to playoffs multiple times in the next 3 years. I firmly believe that. And if he doesn't, I don't know what that means for Reds fans, because this is the best core we're ever going to have with the best manager we're ever going to have. So I'm going to choose to say that it's more likely that he makes a World Series, because once you get in, you only got to win a few series to get there, which obviously is not very likely to happen. It's not very likely to happen. No, it's not. If I had to guess what happens with Terry Francona is in the next 3 years, we win 2 to 3 playoff series total.
Yeah?
I don't think he's going to miss the playoffs all 3 years. I just don't. I don't see that happening. And because I think he's going to make it more often than he doesn't, I think it's more likely he makes a run.
That's fair. It's a fair point. I don't, and this is, who said this in the chat? Anthony. Thank you, Anthony. We won't get to an NLCS. I agree. I don't think the Reds get to an NLCS. I don't see a world where they win a playoff series. It's just not in my brain. I think you're right. I believe it, and I certainly wouldn't be a Reds fan if I didn't believe it, that the Reds will make the postseason in the next couple of years, at least one time, God willing, one time. Reed keeps bringing in these projections. I forget which projection had the division, but it was the Cubs win the division with an 82 win record or an 83 win record, whatever the hell it was. It's like, if you can't win 88 games, what are we doing? 88 wins is not exactly a high bar to climb, especially in today's game. So I have optimism. I have hope that Terry Francona is going to be the guy that fixes this. We haven't had a World Series caliber manager since Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker was a World Series caliber manager, and guess what? He was damn good with the Reds. He didn't win a playoff series, but he got them there, and that's the first step. David Bell got the Reds to a COVID playoffs with respect. I don't even really count it. It's a skewed season, and it's 60 games. So I don't know what exactly we were to gain that year. I get the point where it's, every team has the same opportunity, yada, yada, yada. And that's true, certainly. If we have the opportunity to play for a World Series, I don't care how many games the season is. But without a doubt, it's not 162 games. So there's no way of knowing how good that team really was. I'd like to think they were good. The pitching certainly was. But we don't know how good the bats were. We don't know if the bullpen was going to be able to fix or have a solid back half of the season. We don't know. We don't know if anybody would have gotten hurt. There's no way of knowing anything. Saying that, Terry Francona, I believe he's going to make the playoffs. It's just far more likely, in my opinion, that he misses the playoffs all 3 years than make a World Series or win a World Series. God forbid he win a World Series.
It's created almost a separate sidebar conversation with this, too, because, Jake, you said it's super low. That the reason I feel like the Bengals have a better chance, let's just put a 20-year window on it. If I had to put money on who has a better chance of winning a championship, the Bengals or the Reds over the next 20 years.
Oh, it's not even close.
It's not even the same.
It's not even in the same stratosphere.
No.
It's Bengals.
But like you made it sound like so low. You said the chances were low earlier, correct?
Lower than 50%. Like, I think the only team that has a 50% of winning a Super Bowl is the Chiefs. Like, I think everyone's percentage is lower than that. Sure, is what I'm saying.
No, but I gave my window was massive. My window was what? If I lived to
how many lifetimes did we just go without them not making it back to a Super Bowl?
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Like, I'm just saying, we have Joe Burrow for what, 5 more years on this contract? With the way it's trending this year, that's it with him.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying you have a 5-year window, and then you have the rest of your life to find another Joe Burrow.
Which I think the odds of that are pretty high. I think you could find a good quarterback. Maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe it's not the next cycle, but it could be.
Right. Well, 15, yeah. You have a lot. But I'm saying if in the lifetime window that is so big, you're throwing away a decade in the middle,
Yeah.
the window gets much smaller.
Certainly.
So I think the Bengals probably have this Joe Burrow window, and then in our lifetime they'll probably have one more window with an elite quarterback to try to win a Super Bowl, and we just got to cross our fingers that they get one in one of those windows. And I think that you never know what the future might hold. So it's just, I mean, it's Captain Obvious here, but obviously the Bengals' best chance to win a Super Bowl is right now with Joe Burrow.
It's just an easier path. The
NFL as a whole is an easier path.
It's a far easier. You win 4 games. 4 games. That's it. That's what it is. In baseball, you have to win how many games? Is that 12 games? 14 games? Something like that? I don't know how many. I don't know what the number would be if you made the wild card. But it's just far more games you have to play. So it's unlikely.
Plus football, I mean, obviously vastly different. Yeah. But the NFL, it recycles teams so quickly. I know, like, it seems to be like the same teams at the top almost every year. Those are very well-run organizations. The Steelers, a bad year, is 8 to 9 wins and an early exit in the playoffs, which they've had quite a few bad years by their standards as of late. They're hoping that standard is raised this season, of course. But, like, overall, we've seen how quickly. I mean, the Houston Texans have reset their franchise twice in less than a 7-year, 8-year window. You know, they drafted Deshaun Watson. He turned into a Pro Bowl quarterback. They made the playoffs, got a playoff win. They lose him. They rebuild again. They get C.J. Stroud. Since then, they've won a division and won a playoff game. Like, it's the cycle to rebuild, if you will, is so much quicker and easier in the NFL, Major League Baseball. Plus, you have, and look at the Bengals. You win 2 and 4 games back-to-back seasons. If you have 1-2 really good drafts, you're back like that.
It's because the draft's set up so well.
Yeah. Well, shut up. Okay. So, but in baseball,
thank God.
In baseball, well, hold on. No. Hold on. I wasn't trying to fix the draft. I just hated incentivizing losing. But that's besides the point. We're all friends today. Let's not do that. Okay. Baseball, you have 1 or 2 good drafts. You don't reap the rewards of that for 2 or 3 years later if you're lucky with that. But either way, I think. Do you think
that'll change ever in Major League Baseball? Do you think they'll become, and it's hard because talent is so vastly different in baseball, but do you think it will become we start drafting guys and they play on opening day? Something like that. I mean, obviously the seasons are not going to do that. So, but I'm saying like
I think we're trending in that direction.
I think we are too.
With how big Paul Skeens' boom was, I think they're going to start pushing for that more for the college guys. Just because why did people attach themselves to Paul Skeens so much right when he started?
Yeah.
Because 8 months ago, they watched him win a College World Series.
Yep.
Like, that matters. Watching these guys play in the college football playoff and then go play in the NFL, that, like, following guys, creating fandoms outside of your own team matters. And I think that's a big thing we always talk about with baseball is we only watch the Reds for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't watch the rest of the league, and I think part of that is because you can't follow guys all the way up through college. Like, a lot of the teams I watch in the NFL outside of the Bengals, other than like Red Zone and stuff, it's because they have Buckeyes or Alabama guys that I want to watch play. Sure. And that's just not the case in the MLB because you don't have any real connection to college baseball.
And I'm hoping it's just talent level too. Like, I'm hoping the talent is improving, and I think NIL, we talk so much, and I think we talked about this around the draft last year, so many times. I mean, like, you don't make a lot of money. Baseball's not getting a lot of attention money-wise, obviously, before NIL. So those guys quickly wanted to get out of college and quickly get to the minors. You're not making a ton of money there, but you're making money. Now, for some of these, baseball programs like Tennessee and others, they're giving out major NIL dollars to some of these college baseball players. And I think it's the incentive to stick around in college longer. You're being developed in college longer. You're getting more attention at a much higher level longer than going to the bottom of a farm system and just hoping that you can stand out amongst the many talents that are there. I think that plays a role in it too. Chase Burns too is another one. I'm excited to see what his trajectory is as far as how fast they sent him through the system. Will he start out in Dayton? We've talked about this as well. Does he start out in Dayton? Is he going to be right in Louisville right away? Will we see him next season in a Reds jersey at all? I don't know, but I'm hoping that for baseball's sake, more stars will be developed if they come out of college stars and are stars right off the bat in baseball. I think that's a huge win when it's all said and done. So,
no question about
Pittsburgh, no one gives a rip about Pittsburgh Pirates baseball, but Skeens made them relevant, even though they're bad, and that's the importance of that. Skeens made them relevant. I want to see more of that in baseball in that regard. But all right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, we'll pick up with this, of course. What's more likely in 2025, Allie De La Cruz to win MVP or Hunter Green to win a Cy Young? Which one of those is more likely? We'll get to that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. Allie De La Cruz, superstar player, of course. We have enjoyed our time watching him already in the very early portions of his career in Cincinnati, and we feel like he has all the tools to be a future MVP. I know that there's a certain superstar player in the National League that might kind of block him from winning one anytime soon, but could MVP fatigue start to kick in for Shohei Ohtani at some point? That could play a role in this more likely scenario. We just talked about Hunter Green a little bit ago, of course, finishing top 10 in the Cy Young voting, finishing 8th overall. He gets that $1 million incentive in his contract, of course. Had a great season. We talked earlier, I think 8 seemed kind of low, but I do think the injury and missing that last month and some change of the season, obviously not being elite right off the bat to start the season, probably played a role in that. But look, at the end of the day, as we sit here right now, we do have a pitcher that is talented enough to win a Cy Young, and we have a player that's talented enough to win an MVP for the Cincinnati Reds at this point. But which is more likely in 2025? Hunter Green winning a Cy Young or Allie De La Cruz winning an MVP? Which is more likely, guys?
I think there's a 0% chance anyone in the National League wins the MVP next year because the guy that just went 50-50 is going to start pitching again. So I'm going to say it's Hunter Green because I think Shohei, that MVP fatigue that you're talking about is really, I think, Ellie's only chance. Because that's the only reason Aaron Judge won one. Is because people got sick of Shohei. I mean, if I told you what Shohei was doing a decade ago, you'd say, no wonder he wins every MVP. He should. We've never seen that before. But obviously, fatigue happens in every sport, or LeBron would have 20 MVPs. So I think Ellie will get one at some point. I think he'll be a guy that keeps putting up these gaudy numbers, massive WAR seasons, massive stolen bases. The power's going to come at a more consistent rate. I think he'll get up to 40 home runs at some point in his career. And I think he'll win an MVP. I just don't think it'll be in 2025. I think if Hunter Green stays healthy for 162 games and starts every game he's supposed to, he will be right there in the top 2 or 3 of the Cy Young and maybe even win it. He'll have the strikeout numbers. He'll have the crazy highlights. He'll have the no-hitters. He'll have the all those low-number games that you want out of a pitcher to be in that conversation. Hunter Green's going to have it all as the ace of the Reds. I think it's more likely that he wins the Cy Young.
I think it's more built for Hunter Green to win a Cy Young. He gets strikeouts at a high volume.
Right.
After this season, you're gonna see, or at least you have the belief that he is going to be the pitcher that throws 7 innings a game. I just think it's easier for him. We talk about the path, the percentages. I think the percentage is higher because it's just vastly more difficult for Allie De La Cruz to win a MVP with Shohei Ohtani still in the league. I think Hunter Green's a damn good pitcher. I think he's phenomenal, truly. If he stays healthy for an entire season, if he was healthy the entire last season, he finishes top 3, in my opinion. He finishes top 3 for sure in the NL. I would say that Ellie is elite. We all know this. He's a superstar. But until he gets the power numbers back, I don't think he's going to be able to win MVP over Shohei. If he can go 40-80, then yeah, he's going to win an MVP. But I need those home runs to keep bumping up. And he's by the way, so young. So young, Ellie De La Cruz is. So there's plenty of time for him to be able to get there. You just got to give him. I mean, you got to wait. It sucks. You just got to wait till Shohei retires.
Brady Dunlap in our chat says you can't have an MVP with 29 errors like Allie had at shortstop last year. If you move him to the outfield, he probably leads the league in assists and has fewer errors, which puts him more firmly in that conversation. I couldn't disagree more. I think Ellie's errors wouldn't have played a factor at all last year in the MVP conversation. I think he finished pretty high. I think it's the strikeouts is the thing for me that if he brings that down as getting on base more, it would just increase the stolen bases, which is what he needs to get back higher in that conversation. I also think diminishing the position he plays on defense would hurt him because he plays the most important position on the field right now, and he does it at a very high level defensively, which I think boosts him even more. I mean, when you look at MVP, you're not just going to look at the home runs and the stolen bases. Ellie was the 4th best defensive shortstop in the MLB this year in terms of outs above average, and that's going to go into that conversation. He could be one of the best outfielders in the league. The best defensive shortstop would get a nod over that. So I think him playing shortstop and playing it, in all honesty, pretty similar to the way he played it last year. Clean up some of the routine mistakes, but I'll take more errors for a lot of the plays that he made last year. That makes him who he is. I'm willing to roll the dice on a lot of that stuff. I think Ellie at shortstop is by far his best chance to win an MVP.
So the most fascinating thing about Allie De La Cruz is the fact that, if you compare him to Shohei Ohtani, they have nothing in common. And I think
No.
that's the best thing. That's the best thing happening for Allie De La Cruz. And what I mean by that is the strengths of each player. I mean, right now, when you look at Shohei Ohtani, the most dominant player in baseball has to be him. There's no doubt about it. But with the MVP, and again, the debate about how people truly vote on these, do they follow what the model of this should be, the most valuable player? I'm not saying that I wouldn't guarantee that the Dodgers would have won a World Series without Shohei last year, but they still would have probably at least been in the National League Championship Series and most likely probably still in the World Series. Who knows? But I don't know if Shohei, who goes to the most, like, I will say this, if Soto does end up with the Dodgers, I don't see Shohei winning MVP next year because I think it's tough for anyone to win MVP on the Dodgers when you have a all-star roster. Now, they had an all-star roster last year, I get that, but who else in the National League was truly bumping up numbers next to him to really challenge it? If Allie De La Cruz is in that conversation, that means obviously his steals are through the roof, which they always have been, but that means you're right. They bring the strikeout numbers down. The errors cleaned up a little bit. Very good defensively at shortstop. Yeah. If he's one of the best defensive shortstops, brings the strikeouts down, and is one of the most exciting players on the base paths while knocking the ball out of the ballpark, that is a completely different field of interesting than what you see from Shohei Ohtani. Both are fantastic, but the only way Ellie does that is if Terry Francona, now the manager there, has this team playing at a level that they're competing for the playoffs, possibly winning the NL Central. If that is the case, I really can't see Ellie winning an MVP next season if that is the case. But Jacob, I'm with you. When Shohei Ohtani adds the pitching numbers on top of everything he did last year, which was one of the all-time great seasons, it's going to be tough to top that, but I think everyone loves a good storyline. Shohei's a great storyline, but we've seen that story rolling for a bit. The pitching will be new with the Dodgers. That element will definitely help. But, man, if Ellie does this on a winning Reds team, I mean, Ellie was starting to get to the MVP conversation last year on a bad Reds team. Imagine Ellie on a good Reds team when they're getting all those bigger ESPN games and Fox games, and you have Terry Francona as the manager. It's a storyline-driven type of award as well, like most. I definitely could see him coming away with that next year. Hunter Green, I need to see him be healthy for a bigger chunk of the season. That's the other problem I have. I think he's more equipped to win it right off the bat next year than Ellie. Ellie has a lot more ground to cover, but I also worry about the health and stamina of Hunter Green when it's all said and done. I like Hunter Green's chances to win it next year if the Reds are competing at a high enough level for him to be put on that platform.
I think the thing with both of these questions, Ellie MVP and Hunter Green Cy Young, if the Reds are competing for the playoffs, not only will that record help them, the Reds aren't going to be competing for the playoffs without elite years from Hunter Green and Allie De La Cruz.
Yep.
Like there's no way the Reds are in the playoff hunt without them playing well. I mean, we're saying that they need the record in order to be considered for those awards, but those two things go hand in hand. I think Hunter Green's going to pitch great next year. I think the Reds are going to be in the hunt, and I think both these guys are going to be top 5 in their respective awards. I think they're going to be absolutely near the top of the league, and even if they don't win it, there's going to be a hell of a cash-out opportunity for a lot of Reds fans.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm going to be on both of these, no question about it.
I actually disagree with you, Kinner. I think you said that Shohei Ohtani, it's hard to see you win an MVP, or it's hard to see him win an MVP on a team that's just filled with other MVPs. I think Ellie's biggest knock, or one of Ellie's biggest knocks, is that nobody else on the team is helping him. I think when you have to do it all by yourself, I think it's a different mindset. When you constantly have nobody on base, I think that's a massive detriment. If you have several All-Stars on your team that you know are going to be able to be driven in by Shohei Ohtani, that's everything. Like Joey Votto, despite what those Reds teams were, they had guys that could get on base a little bit. Like that's at least what I saw. And then you have last year Allie De La Cruz. It seemed like it was him versus the world at times. Sure, you had the Jonathan India month where he was really hot. Outside of that, there wasn't a lot of good offense last year, and I think that hurts Allie De La Cruz more than anything, because when he's not a leadoff hitter, at least he probably won't be next year. He's hit in the leadoff position, so nobody fact checks me. But I do think he's like a 3-4 hitter, and you need people on base. You need to be able to drive runs in. You need to be able to create opportunities. When it's just you out there, it's far more difficult to create those opportunities unless you're hitting 60 home runs, which he's not.
No. And last thing on that, too, I agree with you. Last year, not having a lot of help. But if the Reds are contending, guys will be contributing more. But what I like is they won't be contributing at the level that you're going to be getting from Freeman and possibly Soto and some of those other elite weapons that are on that Dodgers roster. So it's like, yes, Shohei's going to have a lot more. And by the way, the pitching numbers, as good as what he was with the Angels, he's going to have way more defensive help with him with the Dodgers. So I think his pitching numbers could be even significantly better than what they were with the Angels because of the help he has around him defensively. On top of that, he will have that help. But like I said, kind of to piggyback off what you said, Elliot, he will not have as much help. He will not have as many good players around him to help prop up his numbers the way Shohei does. But that's why any success that Ellie does have makes it even more impressive to me because of the lack of help that he has around him to help prop him up. Hopefully Matt McClain is more healthy this year. Hopefully they go get some help in the outfield from not just a defensive standpoint, but from an offensive standpoint too, to help with the bat in their hand. It's going to take a whole team effort for Ellie to ever win an MVP. That's why I never really bought into it last year. I never really bought that, he could play his way into the MVP race because I just didn't think that the Reds were good enough. He's good enough. Are the Reds going to be good enough? I think that's what it comes down to when it's all said and done.
No, you're right. But my issue with Ellie is what's the ceiling probably if we're talking about like the best season possible. Top defensive shortstop in all advanced metrics, 40-80?
40-80.
40-80, and he's cleaning up the strikeouts and the errors. That's not beating 30-30 with a 3-5 and 15 wins.
Yeah.
Like even the ceiling. And if they get Soto, not just will it help Shohei be protected in the lineup batting, but those wins as the starting pitcher are just going to skyrocket. And that's always what he was missing in LA. He had the ERA and the strikeouts and all those different things, but he wasn't able to get the pitcher wins. What happens if he goes 20-20-20? Stolen bases, home runs, pitcher wins.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible. Like, I think all that stuff's on the table for Shohei. And if we didn't have that, if he wasn't pitching, I'd be very confident in Ellie next year. Craig does put something in the chat, which definitely does come into play for this. Shohei's been injured a ton in his career. He could get hurt next year, miss significant time, and then that opens the door for just about everybody. But then you have to consider if Shohei's out of the Dodgers lineup, more eyes get put on Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, maybe Juan Soto. I mean, we all remember Shohei Ohtani as the locked-up MVP with months left to go in this season. At one point, Mookie Betts was minus 400. Like, the Dodgers just have a ton of different guys that can win this award, much bigger names. So I think even outside of Shohei, there's just so much competition in the NL, and I'm less confident in the Reds being an all-around competitor, and I think that's what's going to hold Ellie back.
And that's what drives me nuts, though, because if you talk about most valuable, like, we know dominant-wise, that's Shohei. But if you take Shohei off the Dodgers, they've won a World Series without him. Like, how valuable
They won this
is
World
he?
Series without him.
I mean, to me, I felt like he was more valuable on the Angels than what he is on the Dodgers because the Dodgers are good enough to win it with or without him. The Angels, their best chance of being good, and they weren't good when he was there, I get that, but he still won those MVPs. The best chance they had was him being good. The Dodgers don't have to have him being dominant as a pitcher and a hitter for them to be good. Ellie, if he's not dominant, if he's not good defensively at shortstop, if he's not good on the base paths, if he's not good with the bat in his hand, the Reds take a major step back in preventing them from being able to accomplish their ultimate goal, which is hopefully to get to the postseason in 2025.
Yeah,
but
it'd be really cool if the MVP in any sport went to the most valuable player.
That's how it should be.
It'd be awesome.
Because it's not the same. Like LeBron, I know everyone says, he went and joined up with super teams. If you just take the Miami Heat era out and just go back to his first run in Cleveland, towards that back end, should have won it probably 3 or 4 straight years during that stretch because that truly was. You take him off, that team will not succeed. You take Shohei off the Dodgers, they'll succeed. That's the problem I have with Shohei winning the MVP from that standard when it's all said and done. So, hell, even Judge. I think you take Judge off the Yankees, they're a different team. Look, he was on the roster in the World Series, but when he wasn't hitting the ball, the Yankees couldn't compete with the Dodgers. Like, they need him to be able to compete. I don't know if the Dodgers truly need him when it's all said and done. But all right, good stuff, guys. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Let's talk about your Cincinnati Bengals when we come back. We're going to look at this roster. There's some key players that, of course, had expectations for this season. Some are contributing this season, but we don't know what the long-term outlook is when it comes to the contributions of these particular players. So keep, cut, and trade. We'll throw out various Bengal players currently on the roster and discuss what their future outlook is with the Cincinnati Bengals organization. We'll be right back. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Jacob and I were talking earlier today. We're like, man, we want to talk Bengals, but what's there to say?
Yeah.
Ooh, have you touched on how bad the defense has been? I don't know if anyone's considered how bad they are.
Kinner, have you thought about talking about the front office drafting poorly?
I don't know.
How about the coaching staff?
What about here's the thing, and how much better would the Bengals be if they had Joe Mixon? That's really what this.
That's what the people want to know. That's what the people want to know. Yeah,
so
it's
what
tough.
do we? I don't know. I mean, without being too repetitive on a lot of this stuff, and a lot of times things do get repetitive. But to be repetitive, we said this on yesterday's show. Jay Morrison said it on the show 2 days ago. Jay Morrison, who's covered the Cincinnati Bengals for quite some time, said that there's a lot of people that are getting on Bengals media saying, well, the players and coaches are getting agitated because you're asking the same damn questions every single game. But as Jay said, well, it's the same problems every single game. They're losing games the same way every time. They're putting up a lot of points, and they're giving up a lot of points. There's special teams errors at the end of games, and there's just everyone's mad at different portions of the play calling. It is the same thing every single week. So there's, of course, always the same repeated talking points when it comes to this team. But look, whether they're out of the playoff picture or not, I know mathematically still very much in it. They come out of the break and they beat the Steelers. Obviously, that keeps them mathematically in it. Could the Bengals get hot with Joe Burrow and then Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? There's no doubt about it. Is the door completely shut? No. Is the likelihood of them making it very high? That's up for debate. But when you look big picture with the Cincinnati Bengals team, the future of T. Higgins, we know is pretty bleak at this point. What about Trey Hendrickson? What about some of these other names, Hubbard and others? What's the outlook for them big picture when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals team? So we're going to do a little keep, cut, and trade. I'll throw out various themes and let you guys discuss and debate about what the future is with these particular players and how they're going to be utilized on this roster moving forward. So let's start right off the bat we'll start with Sam Hubbard, because Hubbard's a fan favorite. He's one of those, you could have success from any player on the roster, but when you have success of a player that is beloved as him by the Cincinnati Bengals fan base, it makes it even more special, which makes it even more difficult when that player is not performing well. What do the Bengals do with Sam Hubbard after this 24 season?
This seems like one of the easier questions for me, and I think it would be even easier if he wasn't the hometown kid with one of the most memorable plays in the history of the franchise, the fumble return against Baltimore. You have to cut Sam Hubbard. I really don't think there's a conversation around it other than what he does in the locker room. And because of that, and because of the injury, the hamstring injury this season, maybe you can work out a restructure to keep him. But I'm not going to forecast any of that kind of stuff. I'm going to work with the numbers we have right now. And if you cut Sam Hubbard this year, you're saving $8 million against the cap going into next season. An absolute no-brainer for a guy who has been abysmal this year. I mean, if you can work out a restructure and get him for a reasonable price compared to his level of play, then I wouldn't be too terribly opposed to doing that. But from what we've seen this year at this price point, absolutely not, no question about it. Have to cut Sam Hubbard. And as much as I've been the anti-Sam Hubbard guy this year, it's not been because I want to be. I like Sam Hubbard. He's a good guy in the community. He's been a leader on this team for a long time now. But when you turn on the tape and you watch him play, it's clear that whether it's the injury or the age catching up to him or whatever it is, he just doesn't have it at a high level anymore. And if the Bengals are going to try to win, you need someone opposite Trey Hendrickson that can make a difference, and he's not doing it. So we either have to restructure this contract so where we don't feel like we have to start him and we can have him come off the bench and be a rotational piece, or we have to cut him and save that $8 million. There's really no other option to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's when it's time to pay the quote-unquote fan favorites, it's always been a discussion, at least in the Reds side of things. Do you pay this guy because of what he was and how much the fans like him, or do you pay him because he's a good football player? You're not going to pay him because he's a good football player going forward. You're paying him because people like him, he's from the area, and what he's done in the past. So if that's the reason you're keeping a guy on the team, not a good reason. Next year he shouldn't be on the roster. He's been battling injuries. I get all of it, but it's time to move on. It's time to move on.
Casey, if you want to jump in on some of these too, by all means, please do so. Obviously, Hubbard, kind of an interesting talking point, a fan favorite, just obviously hasn't been playing well this season. What do you think the Bengals do with Hubbard when it's all said and done?
Well, I can tell you what I'm thinking they'll do. They'll probably keep him.
Yeah.
What I think they should do is a whole other conversation. I do think that they should cut Sam Hubbard. I think it's a no-brainer for any other franchise. It's nothing personal. It's just that he's not performing at a level that is sustainable enough for this team moving forward. you just look at the film right now. He's tripping over himself. He's not as strong as he was. I mean, he's playing on a partially torn hamstring. I mean, what are we doing?
Right.
It's malpractice almost at this point. The fact that throughout his entire career he's been willing to play through injuries, it's a testament to his character. But at some point, I need better play than what I have on the field. And for the last 3 years, he's been dealing with just a calf injury, a hamstring, a shoulder, or whatever, and it's affected the play on the field. So I just can't continue to do it anymore. I need something that's a little more juice.
I'm with you. I give him credit for playing through all these injuries and trying to hide them and keep giving the team everything he has. At some point, you have to ask the question: are you hurting the team by hiding all these injuries?
Right.
Go on the injury report. Go get the treatment you need. Go take a few weeks off on IR. You need to get healthy, because the version of Sam Hubbard that we're watching right now, I know he's never been a Trey Hendrickson or a world-beating edge rusher. He's been way better than what we're seeing this year, and it's not even close. And I like to think that it's because of injuries that he's playing at this level, and if that's the case, I don't want him to keep playing through it. Take the time off and get healthy. That's the only way you're going to help yourself and help the team. And then when you take that time off, that would give the Bengals an opportunity to run Myles Murphy for more than 30% of the snaps.
Yeah.
And see what you have out of your first-round pick from last year. I don't know. I do absolutely give him credit for that, but I think at some point that quote-unquote toughness might be hurting the team.
One of the things that I hope they take note of is what happened at the running back position this year. It was a lot of 50-50. We were kind of begging for Chase Brown to get in there more often. Yeah. And when Zach Moss got hurt, they put in Chase Brown, and Chase Brown has not looked back. He's been one of the best backs since taking over that starting role in the league. I mean, he's been a solid pass protector. He's been great in the passing game, catching the ball. He's been solid in the run game. I know it's a little dependent on your offensive line, but what he's been able to do, it's been pretty solid. So I hope they can just learn from that to trust some of these young guys to make impacts on this team. Myles Murphy, he's your first-round pick. You got to give him some runway. You got to get him more snaps. So that's my thoughts on Sam Hubbard. I think the smart thing to do for the organization is save the $9 million. That's another starter on this team. That's a solid starter on this team, in fact. So I think that's the move, unfortunately.
Keep, cut, or trade will stay on the defensive side of the ball. One of the bigger offseason acquisitions from the free agency side of things, of course, was Gino Stone. Obviously, I don't think he's played up to the level that many fans had expected him to, of course. But, coming from the Ravens, a lot of people had high expectations. As a guy that would go, good interception numbers, good in coverage. Just curious your thoughts. What do the Bengals do with Gino Stone? Or is it just not even a talking point? Do they keep him? Do they cut him? Do they trade him? Where are you at with Stone?
He can't possibly be on the roster next season. And he's the worst graded defensive player, I think, we have. Maybe Cam Taylor-Britt has surpassed him. I think it's still Gino Stone, though.
Gino Stone's 84th out of 87 eligible safeties.
Woo!
I don't know where he ranks on the Bengals.
Yeah, this guy sucks. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but he's too busy worried about what people are saying about him on Twitter. He's been a bad player this year, and there's no way around it. It just hasn't worked.
Right.
And I think that if you were to keep him next year, it would be organizational malpractice.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And the Bengals, they'll worry with teams like the Bengals and when free agent swing and misses like this is you have to look at the contracts and say, well, are their hands tied behind their back because they're not going to eat dead money? You can't just cut a guy the first year into their free agency contract. Well, kudos to the Bengals, a 2-year, $14 million contract to Gino Stone with an out after this year.
Okay.
So the Bengals will absolutely cut Gino Stone with that out after this season. I think that's another no-brainer, and I guess we can just keep adding to the list of money and draft picks spent to replace Jesse Bates.
Yeah, let's kind of break down why we want to get rid of it. It's not just that he's one of the worst safeties in the league. I mean, we can just look at the numbers and the stats, right? But he's clearly a talker. He talks back to a lot of the fan base, claims that he's doing his job on one play, but let's not look at the rest of the film on the game. I'm sure you're doing your job missing tackles left and right. Yeah, I mean, it's partially because the position for that defense matters so much that you're able to be a sure tackler, and he's just not. He's one of the worst tacklers in the league. He's not fast enough to regain ground when he's burnt on plays or when he's taking a bad angle. Whereas Jesse Bates, he was able to go sideline to sideline pretty effectively, and he was a sure enough tackler to limit the big plays. Gino Stone, as much as I think that maybe in a different scheme he might be better, I just think for this team he's just not good. He's just not good enough, and it deserves. We deserve to get that money back and go get a solid starter that makes more sense in this scheme.
I agree, and this was always a worry with Gino Stone. He's a very volatile signing. You signed him last year because he led the league, or second in the league, in interceptions, and whenever a safety is that high in interceptions, it's because they're jumping routes, and they're trying to read the ball and put themselves in positions to catch it, and maybe they're not the best cover guy in the constraints of a certain system, and I think that's what we're seeing with Gino Stone. We tried to get him to give our defense some more explosive plays, create more turnovers. Now that he's not doing that, he's still getting beat, I would wager to say, in the same ways he was getting beat last year, but he's just not making a play on the ball, which is exposing him way more. And that's the worry you get whenever you sign one of these ball hawk safeties.
And on top of that, too, when you have Cam Taylor-Britt on your side, it just exposes you even more.
It's a little different to put that safety in a defense with Marlon Humphrey than Brandon Stevens than it is to put him behind Cam Taylor-Britt and Josh Newton.
Right.
All right, we got Evan McPherson, we got Trey Hendrickson, we got T. Higgins, and any other players that you guys want to throw out there as well. We'll get to that as we wrap up the radio side of things. When we come back, more Off the Bench next.
Jamar Chase not at practice for the first time yesterday for the Bengals. Do you think there's more meat on that bone than Bengals fans want to admit? I'm trying not to get nervous myself, but all right.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Listen, if you're first of all, there's two things. If you're a Bengals fan, you should be really optimistic on one level, right? We finished 9-8 last year. Joe Burrow didn't play for half the season, and we still had a winning record. And there's been that weird situation where teams have gone from worst to first almost every year, it seems, and the Bengals would seem like they would be a team primed to do that. So there's optimism there. There's something not right about this offseason in Cincinnati. I can't put my finger on it, can't say exactly what it is, but why they're messing around with Jamar Chase's contract is I don't understand. It's the most Bengals thing ever, right? But in the pre-Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor creation of this organization. This is what the Bengals were. This is what the Bengals did. They found players. They messed it up somehow. So they're messing with Jamar Chase. The T. Higgins thing is still very interesting. Joe's had an interesting summer, man, or an interesting offseason, right? He goes on these fashion shows, and now he shows up looking like early Eminem. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the situation with the Bills last year and Stephon Diggs. It just, something wasn't right all year, and it finally escalated, and Stephon is now a member of the Texans. Something's not right in Cincinnati. So yeah, if I'm a Bengals fan, I'm a little, wait a minute, we're not going to be the Bengals we were before all this, right? Because it sort of has a little bit of that feel to it.
That was Trey Wingo, who joined us really right during preseason, right during camp, coming in. I'm the Bengals hater, right? Everyone thought that I knew that he was going to say that coming on. I was just as pleasantly surprised as all non-Bengals fans were about that. I know everyone in the chat was just ripping Trey Wingo, and I understood at the time. I remember coming out of that interview saying, man, I kind of disagree with Trey Wingo. I don't think anything's weird about this offseason. It seems like it's all positive momentum. Everyone's healthy. You know what I mean? Like they added some key pieces in the offseason. Like, what is there to be weird about this, even with the contract stuff with Jamar Chase? But yeah, he might have been onto something. And I know, Elliot, you queued that up. What was it about that caught your attention heading into this conversation?
I just think that there were vibes coming into this year that weren't good. And we all knew that. It was fine, like up until preseason started. It was more fine, I guess. But once preseason started, and the Jamar Chase thing never got done, it felt like something where there was a bad vibe in the air regarding this Bengals team, and I think that vibe coming into a season just derailed it all. And Jamar's having one of the best seasons a wide receiver can possibly have. But the Bengals as a whole, you heard Trey say it at the end of that clip, there's something not right about the Bengals this year. They're not the Bengals that they were 3 years ago. It's just not that roster. It's not that team. It's not that organization. So I just wanted to play it because I think clearly at the beginning of this year, we might have closed our eyes to it. We might have been trying to avoid it the best we could. But there were people out there that said there was just something not right in the air with the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's stuck with us. The Bengals are 4-7, and it's been everything. It's been everything, including a disaster. So I just wanted to play it because it encapsulates the entire season.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I had the same mindset as everyone else as soon as he said that was just overreaction by a Steelers fan, and we were going to be fine. But obviously, it's bled into the first 11 weeks of this season, and he was absolutely right. There's a lot more going on in this building than anyone wanted to admit in the offseason.
But carrying on with our Bengals conversation here again, and a lot of the, when you have a shaky start or a shaky season, because this is no longer a start. We're heading into December. This is the season. This has been a shaky season. In previous years, I mean, even last year with the shakiness of it, you still finished 9-8. I mean, will this team finish above 500? You would like to think so, but will this team surpass last year's record? I don't know. I mean, this was finished with 9 wins at 5-5 when Joe Burrow was out there. He goes out injured, and they still finish above 500. Will this team with the healthy Joe Burrow be able to get to 500? That's the big question mark right now. But with that, when you have uncertainty like the Bengals do, you start questioning which players you need long term and which players you want to cut ties with, and that's what we've been doing over the last couple of segments: keep, cut, or trade. And we'll continue on. Let's go to a guy that I think has been one of the most underrated Bengals even throughout that year that they did make it to the Super Bowl. Let's go with Trey Hendrickson at this point, because this is a guy that everyone feels is being disrespected and left out of Defensive Player of the Year conversations. I've always, not in a hating way, said I don't think you're going to give the best defense, or you're not going to give the Defensive Player of the Year award or give serious consideration to a guy that's the best defensive player on one of the worst defenses in the league. Whether that's fair or not, I just think that's the reality of it. He has been the heart and soul of this defense for years. He's been the best defensive player that this team has had, but he's also getting a little bit older. What is the future of Trey Hendrickson? Is it, okay, you try to find key pieces to build around him heading into next season, or do you use the value of him to try to go get more pieces? Do you trade him? What do you do with Trey Hendrickson? Do you keep him? You're not cutting him. Do you keep him or trade him is basically the conversation at this point with Trey Hendrickson. Where are you guys at with the Bengals' top pass rusher?
I would personally say it's a no-brainer to extend Trey Hendrickson. I think what he's done in this city and what he's done on this team is something that you can't overlook. He's been incredible for the Bengals since he got here, and there's no way I'm letting him leave the building. I mean, I know the Bengals operate in that way and have for years. You don't re-sign 30-year-olds. But I think as we've seen year after year with the Bengals operating with this mindset, there are exceptions to the rule. How many years after we let Andrew Whitworth walk, where we bang in the table, we need a tackle? And this guy's still playing at a high level for 4 or 5 years. We let Kevin Zeitler walk, the guard, and now he had a 95 PFF grade for the Lions last week. These guys can still play at a high level. I'm honestly very for the Bengals' mindset of not extending guys over the age of 30. If you're an organization that's not going to spend big money, don't take risks on non-elite talent at old ages. I'm completely fine with that. This is 100% a clear exception. Trey Hendrickson's one of the best edge rushers in the league. It's quarterback, wide receiver 1, left tackle, edge rusher, in my opinion. The Bengals currently have great ones at all those positions. You got to keep the edge rusher in town. If I would have seen more out of Myles Murphy or Joseph Osai at this point, maybe I have a different tone. But I haven't seen anything out of any pass rusher on this team that makes me think letting Trey Hendrickson go would be a good decision. I think you have to look to extend Trey Hendrickson. You have him this year. You have him next year. I would already be on the phone working to lock him in for at least another year or two in Cincinnati.
I don't know if I agree. I agree with you in the large scheme of things, because if you lose Trey Hendrickson, the Bengals defense is actually trash. There's no shining light at any position with the Bengals defense if you lose Trey Hendrickson. It's just been a disaster. I think if you were to trade him, I think there's maybe more you can help the defense than if you keep him. Because one, Trey Hendrickson doesn't help the Bengals going forward if everything is just as bad as it is. You can't save him. Max Crosby can't save the Raiders. Garrett can't save the Browns. One good defensive player can't save an entire roster. It's just how it is. And I think if you're able to trade him for a valuable couple of picks, then yeah, I'd consider doing it. Of course, I'd want to pay him. Of course, you want to keep one of the best the sack leader in the NFL with your franchise. Of course, you would want that. But if the Bengals defense is going to be just as terrible as it is next season, then what's the point of having Trey Hendrickson here,
fair.
right? That's my argument. And if you're gonna have 15 sacks, 20 sacks, but not one single other player is going to help you out, then I don't understand paying all that money to Trey Hendrickson. Good organizations sign good players, no matter the position, no matter how old they are. If they're good, you sign them. But if the rest of the roster is bad, and I'd argue the Bengals roster is not in a good spot right at this very second, then I wouldn't spend all that money in the world on Trey Hendrickson to have nobody helping him.
That's a great point. I think we're all talking from the Bengals' perspective. We also have to look at this from Trey Hendrickson's perspective. This is a two-way street. Trey wanted to leave last offseason and came back to try to win a Super Bowl. Well, clearly that's not going to happen this year, or at least right now it doesn't look like that's going to happen this year. What's the incentive for Trey Hendrickson to re-sign here, to come back to Cincinnati? Why would he want to do that? Craig Sandlin threw that question out last night on Chatterbox Bengals. Why would Trey Hendrickson re-sign in Cincinnati even if the Bengals give him a contract extension offer? Because he can go win somewhere else with a better defense with more help. His production is tops in the league right now, and it's being dragged down by what he's surrounded by. It's exactly what we just talked about with the Allie De La Cruz MVP conversation. Your stats can't be as high as they could be if you have nothing else around you to protect you. Teams know Trey Hendrickson's the only rusher worth a damn on the Bengals defense. They're doubling and triple teaming him every single night. You got to get someone next to him to incentivize him coming back, and if he wants to, I would certainly be open to it. But if not, you can't let him walk for free after next year. You have to get value.
No,
like
100%. 100%. You have to trade him. If you have no intention to bring him back, has to be traded.
No question about it.
I will say this regarding the Bengals: if you're able to supplement the defense a little bit, or at least if you have the intention of it, then yeah, sign him, pay him a bunch of money. I'm just saying if our hopes here is we're just going to sign trash, and I probably shouldn't use trash on the radio because it is pretty disrespectful, but they haven't been good. I don't know what else we're supposed to call the defense, right? If they're a bottom 5 defense in the NFL, I don't know other verbiage to use there. But if the goal is for this front office to clean house, help the defense, then yeah, sign him, bring him back. But if that's not the case, trade him.
One thing to consider, too, Jamar Chase, fingers crossed, is going to get that big-time contract. How do you give him a big-time contract and take care of Trey Hendrickson and address all the holes that are on this roster outside of just saying, hey, we're going to, the draft is so important. You do have to plug a lot of holes through the draft, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to fix all the holes in the draft to get to the point where all of a sudden you totally eliminate all the deficiencies that exist this season into next year. If you pay Jamar, and you're going to, and you pay Trey Hendrickson, like in all the points that Jake said, too, it makes sense to do it to a certain extent. Now you pay those guys a boatload of money. How much money is left to go fix holes on this defense in free agency? You're relying on the draft. You're technically right back where you are right now, a year from now, if you pay Jamar and Trey Hendrickson. It's a tough spot to be in because I don't think, and I've heard you guys say this before, fixing this defense is not a one-off season project. It's going to be the next 2 drafts, hopefully pieces from this past draft that are injured and haven't got a chance to see them out there. This past draft, this draft, and maybe next draft. But how you keep all these pieces together that are the experienced veteran players that you know what you get and fix all the holes in the draft, man, I don't know how quickly the Bengals could turn the defense around when it's all said and done. But as you've said, this defense hasn't even had to be – we're not asking for an elite defense, a top 10 defense. If this is just an average defense, the record of the team this year, is vastly different as well.
Paying Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson puts you in hell if you do it the way the Bengals have been extending players for the history of their franchise. That's why I said going into this, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, the biggest thing to watch for this offseason is whether the Bengals cut the guys we're asking them to cut.
Yep.
Because that's the first point where we're going to be able to see whether this front office is willing to break their mold of the way they've been operating forever. And if you do extend Trey Hendrickson and Jamar Chase and you're still only putting guarantees in the first year, you are going to be screwed. You can't do it. You're going to have to change how you operate. You're going to have to spread this money out. Trey has another year left on his deal. Jamar has his 5th-year option next year. You can use those extra years of wiggle room if you're creative like the rest of the GMs on winning teams in the NFL and spread that money around. The Bengals have the opportunity to do it, and you'd still have enough money to extend a guy like T. Higgins if you do it creative enough. We've seen teams bend over backwards, play with the cap. The cap's not real for anyone but the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals operate with that hard number. You see how many years have the Saints been in cap hell?
All of them.
30 years, and they just extended Alvin Kamara, made him the highest paid running back in football. Like, it doesn't matter to anyone but the Bengals because they roll over these money and they're creative with contracts. The Bengals have to break how they're operating. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot longer than 2 years to fix this defense.
We only have a little bit left, but let's throw out an obvious, 2 more names to be exact. Let's go with the kicker, Evan McPherson. I know we talked about him a lot earlier in the week. They just gave him for a kicker, they gave him a lot of money this past offseason, and I thought at the time that was a good contract. You need a kicker. You need a good kicker. And the kicker that they paid in the offseason was the perception of him as the guy that had been so dominant from 50 or further back, what we saw during the Super Bowl run. I mean, he played a pivotal role in those runs, no doubt about it. But now all of a sudden, he hasn't played up to that level, and you have a little bit of time left with him in a contract that isn't the easiest just to get rid of for a kicker. What do you do with Evan McPherson? You cut him, you trade him, you keep him. What do you do with McPherson? Is he the long-term kicker regardless of how he finishes out this season?
I'm keeping him. I'm not cutting him after this season. I mean, if it goes as bad as it's been going and maybe it stays that direction, then maybe we move on from Evan McPherson. But I have a hard time believing he's going to be this bad for the entirety of the season. I think he's going to be the kicker of the future. I definitely want to go get legitimate competition next offseason. I'm not talking about an undrafted or a practice squad guy. I want to bring someone in here that can actually compete with McPherson in the offseason. But I think he's going to be the kicker of the future here in Cincinnati.
Kickers go through rough patches. This is a rough patch. Give him a season or two with the new holder. Let's see what Rico can do next season. Rico, excuse me. And we'll move on. I'm not going to give up on Evan yet. And you can't give up on Evan yet. I don't know what the better alternative would be if you were to cut Evan McPherson at this very second. Let him ride out the season, see if he can fix it. Let him start next season, or at least let him go through camp. If in camp he still looks terrible, then that's when you make a move. But you don't make a move right now. We just saw the Chiefs lose Harrison Butker to a torn meniscus. Cutting Evan McPherson would be completely crazy by the Bengals to do mid-season. I know you're probably out of the playoff hunt. You're down below 15% and all that good stuff. But you still need someone that can put a foot on a ball. And I know McPherson hasn't been great, but he's better than the other options out there mid-season. So I would certainly rock with him through the rest of the season. I think that's the craziest point of this conversation, people asking to cut McPherson during the bye week or anything along those lines. You actually don't even get the benefits of the void year on the contract if you cut him before June 1st. So if you are going to cut him, you wait till the offseason. But even then, I think that would be an overreaction unless it continues this way for the rest of the season and we end the year 0% from 50 yards and all that good stuff. Then sure, move on from him. But I have a hard time believing that this is the new Evan McPherson. Could you imagine the Bengals cutting him and then the Chiefs picking him up?
And being the best kicker in the world.
Could you imagine that? And then they run like it's a two kicker set. They have both kickers line up, but only one of them is going to go in.
You know what they say: if you have two kickers, you don't have one.
That's right.
Last not least, only a couple minutes remaining. Look, we've been talking about T. Higgins for quite some time, and there's still the option to tag him again. You still could tag him and trade him. I don't think they're going to keep him. It would be silly just to outright just let him go. I saw something the other day. ESPN reports that the likelihood is the Bengals are just going to let him go test free, or just let him hit the market. Kind of wild, not getting anything back in return. Now, to their credit, they didn't envision the season being 4-7. They brought him back knowing that they could potentially lose him for nothing, but bringing him back thinking that the return would be maybe not draft picks or players, but the return would be giving this team the best opportunity to win the Super Bowl this season. They obviously haven't got that return, not through lack of his effort or the offense's effort. It's all on the bad defense, of course. But what do the Bengals do with T. Higgins when it's all said and done? Is he really going to walk and they get nothing in return for him?
I think so. I mean, if I had to guess, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's what they did with Jesse Bates, who was the number one safety in football. You absolutely could have got good value out of a double tag on Jesse Bates and trade him again. I don't know why the Bengals won't use these things that the league gives you. You can tag T. Higgins for, I think it's 120% of what he made this year.
Yeah.
It'd be about $28 million, and then you trade him right on that contract to someone else, and you have that window in between the franchise tag assignment and signing day where another team can still get an extension done with him pre-trade. This system is set up perfectly for what the Bengals are in right now with T. Higgins. You took a swing on a 1-year fully guaranteed franchise tag. It didn't work out for you. They give you the opportunity to tag him again and move him for some kind of draft compensation, and it wouldn't be the compensation you would have got last year. It's going to be lower because I think every team in the league recognizes that the Bengals probably can't operate with T. Higgins on that double franchise tag and an extended Jamar Chase next year. You just can't do it. You wouldn't have enough cash to go help the other pieces of this team. The only way T. Higgins is on this team next year is if you can work out a long-term extension. But I don't think that's likely unless he does miss the next 6 games or so and drives that number down below $20 million. But I think if the Bengals don't double tag and trade T, it's one of the worst moves in this franchise's history. But I certainly expect it to happen.
I mean, they got to do it. I hope they do it. I hope they do it. Need to double tag him. Double tag. How many triple tags have there been?
You can only tag twice.
Oh, you can only tag twice?
So none.
Thought I'd ask.
So none. Yeah, Kirk Cousins is the most notable. They tried to find a way to tag him a third time. He wouldn't let him.
Thought I'd ask.
But no, appreciate everybody for hanging out today. Thank you. That wraps it up for us on the radio side. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Oh, yes. By the
And
way, real
that
quick.
was
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
perfect show, man. That was a perfect show.
That was
It
good.
was
that good stuff?
I just added it all up, and it is exactly 2:45 minutes.
Yes.
Worth of clip per hour. So nice job, gentlemen. It was
Chef's
a
kiss.
very, very good all around. No arguments.
Yeah.
No arguments. There was some
Good
laughs.
work, producer.
There was some serious. There were some serious takes. A lot of head bobbing, a lot of agreements,
Some
a
disagreements.
lot of I disagree with you in a polite
Respectfully.
way. Yeah.
Baby
job,
steps
idiot.
on this program.
Baby steps. Real quick, so we don't have a lot of time left because we got to get all this stuff to radio before Tom's show coming up. But for everybody, Champions Grill tonight.
That's right.
Champions Grill tonight on Work Road, both with an E. Champions Grill, Work Road with an E. We are giving away Bengals tickets. I know the Bengals season might be over, but you can still go to the games and support Joe Burrow as long as they still play him. So Bengals tonight, Bengals show tonight, Champions Grill, Work Row with an E, 7 p.m., leading up to, of course, Thursday night football between Kinner's Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We hope to see you guys there tonight. We will be there at 7 p.m. until 8 p.m. So
Be in the front row tonight, so maybe I'll get some TV time.
You got a sign? Front
No,
row,
I'm
you got to have a
streak.
sign.
I'm gonna streak. I'm gonna run across
there
the
you go.
field.
there you
You
go.
got a backflip in your back pocket?
Very unathletic. Very. I'm probably gonna get tased.
That'd be fun.
I would like to see you get tased. I think that would be good for everybody.
But no sign. Maybe I should work on one.
You should get a sign.
But
You should
no.
get a sign.
So Champions Grill tonight.
That's right.
That's right.
Cool.
We will be live. We will be live and in person. So come say hi to us. It should be a fun time. I will say tonight's going to be an interesting battle. The Cleveland Browns have not won with you in attendance, but they're also a system play. So that means what side are we taking here?
I'm taking Jameis to 400 passing yards.
That could happen.
So who are you like? You hate both teams, obviously, division rivals. but
Oh,
which
no.
one-
I love the Browns with Jameis. Love the Browns with Jameis. I'm
As do
very,
I.
very actively rooting for the Browns.
I'll
But
be
what
cheering
if,
for
like,
I'll be cheering
Cleveland-
for Jameis Winston and the Cleveland Browns.
I want the Browns to get Travis Hunter, but what if the Browns start winning some games and the Bengals start to just kind of give up on the season? And what if there's a scenario where, again, Bengals last place back-to-back seasons. I mean, I don't think you want that, do you?
Ideally, the Bengals finish in fourth
Yes, I
in the
forgot who
AFC
I'm
North.
talking to.
I want to play the fourth place schedule next year. I know we didn't take advantage of it this year, but at least it was on paper. It was an easy schedule. Give us another shot, and then give us Travis Hunter. It would all work out.
All they had to do was beat the Patriots. That's all they had to do was beat the Patriots.
No,
They lose the Patriots, and the season's over.
you got an easy schedule next year, and Travis Hunter. That's what's up for grabs between the Browns and the Bengals the rest of the way. But nonetheless. So, all right. Well, we got dialed in, correct? Coming up next.
Dialed in, coming up next.
That's right.
I'm excited. Look, I'm happy for Luke, man. Like Luke to get to cover Big Ten football in general, regardless of the team, is great. But to cover Indiana is unique. But then to get to cover Indiana on the greatest season in the history of the program, I mean, how unique, how cool is that? Indiana, Ohio State. By the way, you watch the Pat McAfee show. You see how mad A.J. Hawk was getting at Pat McAfee yesterday. Hembo was sending in all the stats, actually kind of highlighting when they use the like opponents. Indiana has dominated their like opponents way more than Ohio State. They've had more explosive plays. I also didn't realize Indiana has one of the best run defenses in college football. I mean, whatever that means, going up against the I'm
best run defense in college football, going against the 107th ranked schedule. Luke's had a lot of fun for 10 weeks. It's a shame it ends this week.
It ends? I mean, they lose this week. They still win next week.
No, they lose. They lose. They're out.
Would you be more?
Out.
Would you be more hurt if Ohio State lost this one or Michigan?
Elliot, I wanted to go 1-11 this year, beating Michigan. Nothing else in the world matters than Saturday a week from tomorrow.
All right,
or a week from 2 days.
Okay, all right.
Michigan's the only thing that matters.
I was never concerned about next Saturday until now.
Oh, Brandon Graham's going to have 1.5 million sacks. I'm very nervous. Very nervous.
Michigan's strength is now overpowering the weakness of Ohio State's. It didn't move at all when is it McLaughlin? Yeah, McLaughlin, the offensive line, McLaughlin. So he's out. He was their centerpiece up the middle right there. He was their base. He was their everything. They've already without 2 other starters in that O-line. Now they're just fully exposed. Indiana, maybe we're not giving them enough credit. Maybe they're going to take advantage of that this weekend. But the Michigan game, the game that Ryan Day's career is basically on the line for, kind of, sort of, hopefully not, but possibly. Man, all of a sudden, I think that's going to be a much lower scoring game than we anticipated. Michigan can't score the football, but I don't know how Ohio State's going to move the football efficiently when you can't run it. And I also like the corners of Michigan as well. I want to see Ohio State blow them out, but I do think the strength of Michigan is going to dilute the strength of Ohio State, and it's just going to be a low-scoring, ugly affair. Luckily, Ohio State's at home.
I said Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham plays on the Eagles. Mason Graham is the Michigan D lineman. Thank you, Colin.
You're like you said Colin, but Colin Cowherd. I mean, that was the ultimate Colin Cowherd right there.
Yeah. No, my bad.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us. Champions Grill with the guys tonight. One more time, one more plug.
Also, shout out to Wes Miller for finding a 5-star recruit in his back pocket.
Ooh, there you go.
Big for the Bearcats basketball program. But yes, Champions Grill tonight. We have Chatterbox Bearcats after all the shows today. We have Dialed In, then Bearcats, and then we have Bengals after that.
What a day.
What a day. What a special day. Yes, Champions Grill tonight, 7 p.m. We'll see you guys there for Chatterbox Live.
Mouse Cup says not a 5-star. 4-star.
5-star. I'm going to call him a 5-star. I'll call him whatever I want. And we'll see you guys tonight at 7 p.m. Champions Grill, leading up to Thursday Night Football. Hope to see you there.
That's right.
Good stuff. Luke Brenneman, Tom Brenneman, Dialed In, coming up next. Thank you,
And Casey McAllister.
And Casey McAllister.
There we go.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.